I know I shouldn't be telling you this, but someone needs to know what Nickelodeon tried to hide. I've barely slept since it happened. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the laughter again. Not the cheerful kind you remember from SpongeBob. This laugh was slower, broken, like something was choking on the sound. I was never supposed to see it. I wasn't even supposed to have the tape. And yet here I am, stuck with images burned into my mind. Images I swear are starting to bleed into real life. If I don't share this, maybe it'll keep haunting me. But if I do, maybe it'll find you too. It all started when I stumbled across an old VH. Growing up, SpongeBob was everywhere. Saturday mornings, after school reruns, even birthday parties with those ridiculous yellow cakes. I laughed at the absurd jokes, sang along to the theme song, and never thought twice about how bizarre the show really was. It was safe, colorful, innocent. At least that's what we all thought. Over the years, I'd hear whispers online about lost episodes, things that were too disturbing for TV, episodes that Nickelodeon supposedly destroyed before they ever aired. I always brushed it off as internet creepypasta. Fun to read at 2 a.m., sure, but just stories. Still, some of those rumors stuck with me. The idea that a children's cartoon could hide something sinister, it felt ridiculous, but also irresistible. And that's when nostalgia turned into something else. Because one night, by complete accident, I found myself holding a tape I should have left buried. When I was a kid, SpongeBob was my comfort zone. Saturday mornings, I plant myself in front of the TV with a bowl of cereal, humming along to the theme song like a ritual. The jokes were stupid, the animation was loud, and that's exactly why I loved it. Even now, I can still hear Squidward groaning or Patrick asking some idiotic question. Looking back, it's funny how seriously we took it. We traded SpongeBob quotes at school like they were sacred wisdom. It was harmless bright colors, slapstick, and characters who never aged. At least, that's what I believed. Because buried under all that silliness, there were always whispers. Rumors passed around online about an episode that wasn't supposed to exist, one so disturbing Nickelodeon locked it away. I never thought much of it. Just another creepy internet myth, right? But sometimes myths have teeth. And one night, I found the proof in my hands. I wasn't looking for anything unusual when I found it. Just killing time at a dusty little thrift shop on the edge of town, flipping through old VHS tapes, Disney knockoffs, workout videos, half-erased sitcoms. But at the bottom of a plastic bin, I noticed one that stood out. The label was barely hanging on, written in shaky marker. No artwork, no Nickelodeon logo. Just 2 words scrawled across the spine: SpongeBob Funeral. At first I laughed. It sounded like some kid's edgy fan project. But the longer I held it, the stranger it felt like it didn't belong there. The back of the tape had a faint, faded stamp, property of Nick Studios. The cashier noticed me staring and shook his head. "You don't want that one," he muttered. His tone was flat, almost rehearsed, like he'd said it before. Of course, that only made me want it more. I bought it for $1 and stuffed it in my bag. I should have left it there, but that night, curiosity won. And when I pressed play, I realized this wasn't some fan project. It was something Nickelodeon never wanted anyone to see. When I got home, I dug my old VCR out of storage, dusted it off, and slid the tape inside. The screen flickered, and for a moment, I felt this stupid rush of nostalgia. The classic SpongeBob theme began, complete with that goofy pirate singing, "Are you ready, kids?" Only it didn't sound right. The music was slower, like someone had dragged their finger across the tape reel. The pirate's voice wavered, breaking into static halfway through. And the colors? They were dull, almost gray, like the ocean floor had been drained of life. Still, it looked like SpongeBob. There he was, popping out of his pineapple house, but something about his smile lingered too long. His eyes didn't blink. Patrick was. In the background, standing still, silent. Not his usual bumbling chatter, just motionless, staring off screen. Squidward shuffled by, muttering under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone was low, almost angry. At first, I told myself it was just a damaged recording, maybe some half-finished animation reel. But the longer I watched, the more I realized this wasn't random static or error. It was intentional. And then the episode shifted into something I'll never forget. The episode cut abruptly, no transition, no laugh track. Suddenly, Squidward was standing on a stage. Not his usual half-empty concert hall, but something darker, wider, packed with shadowy figures. At first I thought it was supposed to be an audience, but the longer I stared, the more wrong it looked. Their eyes weren't drawn at all. They were photographs, real human eyes pasted onto cartoon faces. And every single one of them was hollow. Squidward lifted his clarinet, but the sound that came out wasn't music. It was a low, broken wail, like metal scraping against metal. The audience didn't clap. They didn't move. They just stared. Then the camera cut closer to Squidward's face. His eyes began to leak thick, black liquid at first, then bright red, trickling like tears. The animation was too real, as if someone had spliced in actual footage. Behind the clarinet's shriek, I heard something else, faint screaming. I almost turned the tape off right there. My hand hovered over the stop button, but I froze when the audience spoke, not in laughter, but in a chorus of whispers. He's watching us. Over and over, dozens of voices overlapping. Squidward dropped his clarinet, staring straight at the screen. At me. And in a voice I'll never forget, he whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I should have stopped there. Any sane person would have. But that night, I rewound the tape and watched it again. Part of me wanted to convince myself it wasn't as bad as I remembered, that maybe I'd exaggerated in my head. It wasn't. The second viewing was worse. I swore I noticed details I'd missed before, background shapes moving where they shouldn't. A face in the crowd that looked far too human. I invited 2 friends over the next day, thinking I needed witnesses. One refused to stay past the intro. "Nope, that's not SpongeBob." "Turn it off," she said, storming out. The other sat frozen through the whole thing, pale and silent. Afterward, he muttered, "That wasn't a cartoon. That was something else." That night, my TV flickered, even when it was off. A faint static hummed through the speakers, and I thought I heard it. SpongeBob's laugh slowed down, echoing from nowhere. I started digging through lost media forums, desperate for answers. And to my horror, I wasn't the first person to find this tape. The third time I played the tape, it wasn't the same. The episode had changed. Instead of Bikini Bottom, the background flashed with images I recognized: my street, my apartment building, even my own living room. The animation quality broke apart, frames spliced with grainy video that looked filmed through a window. And then Squidward turned, his ruined eyes locking onto the camera. Onto me. This time he whispered my name. Not once, but over and over. His voice growing clearer, closer, until it felt like he was in the room. I wanted to tear the tape out, smash the VCR, anything, but I couldn't move. I won't describe the final scene. I can't. All I'll say is that it wasn't SpongeBob on the screen anymore, and I regret ever pressing play. If you ever come across a tape without a label, don't watch it. Burn it, bury it, do anything but what I did, because sometimes lost media isn't meant to be found. And if you think I'm lying, listen closely. Do you hear that? The laugh? Tell me in the comments if you've heard it too. If you're still listening, maybe it wants you to.